All right. Last week, week 5 of searching for a better life. And I want to just bring us all up to speed to where we're at today. I'm going to do it in 30 seconds. Wish me luck. Roaring 20s and then the Great Depression. We talked about this in week 1, that it's easy to be resilient and it's easy to be steadfast and it's easy to be faithful in relationships and faithful in feelings and faithful in our relationship with God when everything is roaring. But when everything becomes depressing, it's a different story. Which then led into the following week of the 40s and 50s, the fact that there's always conflict. This 2 decades was just riddled with conflict. But we also learned that there's been conflict from the beginning, and there always will be conflict. It's how we respond with this resiliency in the conflict. What do you crave? Or who do you crave? We talked about that in week 2. Week 3, we talked about the 60s and the 70s. And for some of you, you were alive and living and experiencing this no boundaries era. We choose to go to the moon. We're going to go so far outside of the boundaries, we're going to leave planet Earth. And what happened here was we lost all self-restraint. That we became anything we wanted to become, and we could do anything we wanted to do, and we lost self-control in the 60s and the 70s. And then last week, Bobby unpacked the 80s and the 90s. Now that we have no boundaries and we have no self-control, it was instant gratification. I can get whatever I want, whenever I want. Like meatloaf, if you're Yondu. If you were here last week, you know what I'm talking about. If you missed it, watch it on our YouTube channel. A great teaching. But today I'm going to wrap up from the 2000s to today and take these last kind of 2000s and 2010s and beyond and unpack something that's probably more prevalent than we even understand, not just culture, but even our own lives. So I want to start with a question. How many of you have ever done something dumb? Men, we should be like this, right? Yeah, dumb things. And so I'm going to start with a story. Early 2000s, I did something dumb. Kim and I had just been married, and we were hanging out for the weekend at her parents' place in St. John, New Brunswick. We were still in school in Sussex, New Brunswick. So you have to understand, they're 28 miles apart from where her parents lived at the time to where we were going to school at the time. 28 miles. And there was kind of this competition, who could get from St. John to Sussex the fastest. And I was determined today I was going to beat the 20-minute mark. Forever to have the pride and the admiration of my new bride, I'm going to do this. And in the back seat of the car was Kim's younger brother and younger sister. And so I was proving to them that I was a stud of a man and that my wife chose right. And so we're flying down the highway, needle pushing about 140, 150 kilometers per hour. We're in Canada. I'm not an idiot. All the time. Sometimes I'll give you that. But we're flying down the highway 140, 145 kilometers an hour, and the posted speed limit is 100. And I'm going to break this record. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. My wife and I are going to live happily ever after, and I'll have the admiration of her brother and sister, and it's great until I saw the lights in the rearview mirror. And I did what everybody would do. I pulled over to the side of the road, and I grabbed my Bible out of the back seat because I'm a Bible college student, and I placed it on the dash, just hoping he would have compassion for me. Officer came to the window, and I rolled it down, and some of you are like, what does this mean? This is how we used to have to roll windows down. I rolled down my window, and he said, license and registration, and I already had it ready because I knew what I was doing, and he said, do you know why I pulled you over, sir? And I wasn't about to lie. I'm like, yes, I was speeding. I was trying to break a record from from St. John to Sussex in under 20 minutes. Guilty. Takes my license, registration, he goes back to his car, and it felt like 17 hours were passing by because I could sense my wife's death glare. Men, you know what I'm talking about? You don't need to look to know that they are just killing you with their stare. Like, I'm not going to make eye contact because you will suck the soul right out of my body if I look at you. And the officer came back and hands me back my license and hands me back my registration and says to me, he says, Mac Daniels. Do you know a Gary Daniels? And in that moment, I realized he had read my license backwards and thought my last name was Daniels and my first name was Mac. And this Gary guy seemed to be okay in his books. And I wasn't about to lie because I've got impressionable minds behind me. But I wasn't about to admit, I've never heard of that guy, and you got my name wrong. And I said, Gary Daniels. Maybe a familiar name. And he goes, good guy, that Gary Daniels. Good guy. Here's your license and registration. Have a good day. Got out of the ticket because of whoever Gary Daniels was. Good guy, apparently. But there's two things I want to highlight from that story. Well, three things. We've all done dumb things, but two things. Many of us view God like the officer on the side of the road, waiting for us to fly by and mess up. Whistle on his lips, gun on his hips, waiting for us. Fault, mess up, go to jail, go directly to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. We have this view of God that we have to be just good enough and just perfect and have this baseline faith in God. Otherwise, we're going to get the handcuffs slapped on us and ripped away. And many of us on the flip side forget that it's not us that have done anything to deserve God's goodness. I didn't get out of the ticket because I'm a good person. I got out of the ticket because Gary Daniels is a good person. I'm just going to tell you this, and don't hate me. You're not a good person to get to heaven. Jesus is the good person who made a way for you to get to heaven. Maybe I can put it this way. Your relationship with God is not established, or it's not even defined by what you have done for him. It's what he has already done for you. Let that sink in this morning. That this relationship with God is not him on the side of the road with his radar gun. Mess up, mess up, mess up. Pull you over, push you away. It's nothing that you've done. It's everything that he's done by sending Gary Daniels, the good guy, Jesus. And if you hear nothing else this morning, if after this you want to fall asleep and take a nap so you can watch the NHL game that starts late tonight, by the way. It's a 10 o'clock game tonight, this playoffs. I'm going to fall asleep. Get your sleep now. Hear this. You don't have to do anything. He's already done it for you. Some of us have to stop striving, working and trying to earn his love. He's already given it to you. In fact, God gives you the freedom to the better life based on the speed of your obedience. How quickly you surrender to him. How quickly you admit, I can't do this on my own. I need your help. God's freedom to bless you, to give you that better life, because we're all looking for it, is equal to the speed of how quickly we surrender and how quickly we obey. And I wonder how many of us are just wrapped up and consumed. That, listen, God demonstrates his love for you that while you were still sinning, he sent a way for us through Jesus. That while you're still sinning, you're still a sinner. Bad news, good news, you always will be. Still sent his son for you. Which tells me I don't have to get cleaned up. I don't have to have my act together. I don't have to have my Sunday best. While I was still sinning, he sent his son for me. I don't have to compete for his attention and his affection. He sent his son for me. I don't have to complete a checklist or prove myself to get from St. John to Sussex in under 20 minutes. He still sent his son for me. Jesus said, I love you, you're enough for me, and I'm going to give my life for yours. Your relationship's not defined by what you do for him. It's defined by what he's done for you already. And I wonder if some of us just need to sit still and know that he's God. Just be quiet and be still and wait patiently for him. We're searching for a better life somewhere, and it's found in God. One of my wife and I's just favorite verses, life verse. The Lord will fight for you. My job is to be still. Stop striving, stop ceasing, stop trying to prove. And so what I want to do today as we wrap up this series is talk about 2000s to 2023 today and help us understand how does this work in my life when we're competing for this thought, this development, this push from culture that there is no truth. There is no absolute. There is no God. He's one of many. All sorts of roads lead to heaven. But I want to look at Romans chapter 5. If you have your Bibles, you can flip there. We're going to look at 3 specific verses. Romans chapter 5. Because what Paul helps us understand is that it's not us. That as we search for a better life, sometimes we look in the wrong places. And we've done that a lot, especially since 2000 and beyond. We've searched all sorts of places for a better life. This is what Romans chapter 5 says. Beginning with verse 6, Paul says, "You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless," pause. We don't like that. In this culture, in this world, in this day and age, don't tell me I'm powerless. My portfolio says I'm not. My portfolio says I am powerful. Not that I'm not powerful, I am. I'm not powerless. My social network says I'm not powerless. My house and my yard, I'm not powerless. I have all the power in the world. See, this sentence right here, this verse right here hurts us. Sometimes men, this hurts us a bit more because we like to feel powerful and in control. A while back, way back, I was in a board meeting one night. And anybody can come to a board meeting and have a conversation with the board or with me or whatever. And this gentleman came in and was expressing some frustrations with me, and he's allowed to do that. And we were sitting with the board, and then he made a statement that really kind of sums up 2023. This is what he said with me, to me, and to the board. He said this. He said, "Until you give me what I want, I'm going to not tithe to the church. I'm going to withhold my money from the church." Listen, it's your money, you do what you want with it. But the minute you think God needs your money is the minute you've done God, you, God. Or the minute you've done God, you, God. I'm just going to tell you, God doesn't need you, God wants you. God doesn't need Dan's tithe. God wants Dan's tithe, because Dan's tithe is tied right to his heart. And if I don't give back to God what's God's, then I'm telling him, you don't have control of my money. You don't have control of my finances. I have to discipline give back to God on purpose. Because if I don't, I think I'm powerful. So while you were still powerless, that one stings a little. I don't like that. Christ died for the ungodly. That's me. I don't have power. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But listen, God demonstrates his love for you, for me, for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Christ gave his life for us. And I just wonder how many of us are trying to earn our way by doing good and being good and saying good, being powerful. I mean, Burger King's tagline, BK, have it your way, you rule. We're being conditioned to think that we have all the power and we have all the control and all the authority. And I'm just going to tell you, we don't. That while we were still sinning, Christ died for us. He's the one with power. He's the one with control. He's the one with authority. And what's happened in culture, and it's even crept into the church, is we've begun to place conditions on God's love. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this. If you're a parent and you have kids, you're going to completely understand. If you're not a parent, but you've seen kids interact with their parents, you'll understand. Or if you were a kid, you'll probably understand. This is everybody, by the way. That's a blanket statement, in case you didn't catch it, in case you already fall asleep. This is what we've done. We've placed conditions on love. If you're a parent, your kids have probably said at one point or another, "Hey, can I play video games instead of doing my homework? Hey, can I have 5 cookies even though I've already had 3? Hey, can I skip the shower tonight even though I have like the pig pen cloud following behind me and I smell? Hey, can I have something that is not good for me, but I don't know that it's not good for me, but you as a parent do?" Now, if you're a good parent, at one point, like Harrison right now will say, can I stay up past my bedtime and watch hockey playoffs with you? I mean, he just knows how to pull at these heartstrings. But here's what we've done as kids, because kids view grace, view love, view God. by getting what we want. We've placed conditions on God's love. As his kids, if we don't get what we want, we say this, well, you don't even love me. You didn't let me stay up past my bedtime. You don't even love me. You didn't give me that 5th cookie. You don't love me. You made me do homework instead of playing video games. You don't even love me. And we place conditions, and it's natural because that's how kids view love. But if we ask for something that we don't know is not going to benefit us, but God knows isn't going to benefit us, do you have the trust and the faith to believe that what he's giving us is best for us, even though it might not feel like it? Because if we go all the way back from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, into today, we've been conditioned to think that we are in control. And we define love of God and for God and from God and by God as getting our way. If God really loved me, he wouldn't have done this. If God really loved me, this wouldn't have happened to me. If God really loved me, he would have got me out of that jam I was in. If God really loved me, he would have restored the relationship. If God, and because God can and God didn't, then God doesn't love me. And we've placed conditions on his love. We define love by getting our way. God defined love by sending the way. And if we can get this right, we will have the better life. We define love by getting our way. I need what I want. I was taught that in the 80s and the 90s. God defined love by sending the way. To rescue us, to redeem us, to restore us from sin. Sin is a word we don't use. We don't like it. It sounds harsh. Remember in the 90s when there used to be sexually transmitted diseases? And now there's sexually transmitted infections? Because infections just sounds a little bit nicer than a disease. They're the same thing. We've just changed the language. We don't like the word sin. It sounds harsh. Oh, Pirates of the Caribbean. We don't like it. So we soften it. Well, that was just a bad choice. I was just coloring outside the bounds a little bit. I was just being a little selfish. And yet Paul, in the next chapter, says this: the wages of sin, this willful disobedience to God, is death, separation from God. But the gift of God is eternal life in Jesus. And so I asked at the very beginning, how many of you ever done something dumb? And we're like, yeah, woohoo, had double hands, woo, feet up. But what if I asked it this way? How many of you are living in sin? I mean, you'd be offended at that question. You don't dare ask that question. That's personal. That's private. I'm not going to tell you that because we've wanted to eliminate it to look good. We'll live in it as long as you don't find out about it. I'm proud of the dumb things I do because it's funny. Sin's a different story. How many of us are living in willful disobedience to God? And what we do is we bury our heads in the sand because the world's convinced us that there are no consequences to our actions. No morals, no absolute truths. 60s and 70s taught us no more boundaries. Do what you want to do. Go where you want to go. Be who you want to be. The 80s and 90s taught us make yourself happy, self-gratification, self-fulfillment, live your best life. Can I ask you a question? Who defines and who declares what sin is in your life? This is a loaded question. Who defines it? Who declares what is right and what is wrong? In fact, if you go all the way back to the Old Testament in the book of Judges, the Israelites continue to mess up. And whenever God raised up a judge for them, it says this, that God was with them and he saved them. He rescued them. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than that of their predecessors, that of those of their fathers. And they begin to follow other gods and they begin to prostitute themselves out. And all through the book of Judges, there's a phrase. You probably know what it is. And again, the Israelites did evil. in the eyes of the Lord. And God would raise up a judge. He would die, and again they would do evil. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that evil in the eyes of the world is different than evil in the eyes of the Lord? Because if you don't, you're going to fall for anything. Evil in the eyes of the Lord is different than evil in the eyes of the world. So you have to wrestle down. We talked about this 3 weeks ago. Who defines your morals, your values, and your ethics? And what we've done in the last 20 years, 25 years, is we have eliminated the capital T truth, the way the truth and the life, and we've replaced it with a lowercase t, that all things are true. I'll just tell you, if everything's true, nothing's true. And you know where it started? In the Oval Office. I'm Canadian, don't hate me, but I watched this unfold in the late 90s.
Good morning. Hi. How are you? Thank you.
I am very pleased to introduce America's true education president and the greatest champion of working parents and working families that the United States of America has ever known, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Now, I have to go back to work on my State of the Union speech, and I worked on it till pretty late last night. But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
So, if you watch that live, and you can remember it, there was a couple subtle things that were said in that. Did you catch Hillary's glare? The way that the president was introduced, I'd like to introduce to you the true education president. They were giving us subtle cues that what he was about to say was truth. We all knew he was lying. He convinced himself and he convinced others that he was telling the truth. Subtle nuances, subtle things. And what it taught us was we can create our own paradigm. We can create our own reality then. Until a couple years later, he kind of got caught.
It becomes clear he wasn't always telling the truth.
Over the years, there have been dramatic late-night speeches from the White House, national tragedies and national triumphs, but nothing like the speech that we're about to hear from there tonight.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible. I misled people, including even my wife. I deeply regret that.
That's where the 90s took us. The President of the United States had to testify under oath about a woman in the Oval Office. This would have been inconceivable in the time of John F. Kennedy. But the 90s weren't the 60s.
President Clinton's mea culpa sparked a lot of reaction from people who watched his speech from New York.
I still like him as the president.
To California.
He should have laid more of his cards on the table.
There was skepticism in Houston.
What else has he lied about?
And cynicism in Minneapolis.
If Hillary don't mind, then it shouldn't be anyone else's business.
There's a whole message in that video. He never apologized. He just said he got caught. And what he taught us is that there are no consequences to your actions. What he taught us was a new paradigm. You can create your own standards. You can create your own perspective. You can create your own set of ideas. And that really pushed into the early 2000s, a brand new paradigm shift in so many facets. So as we've talked about the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, to today, I'm going to go back to the early 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, and help us understand one of the biggest shifts that's happened in our generation is the social shift. This is so important to understand. There'll be a lot of facts, but there'll be pictures because we are picture people. This is what happened in the early 2000s, late 90s. We had this deep sense for connection because God hardwired us that way, and this began to emerge. Remember this? AOL chat rooms. For those of you, I'm not clearing my throat, I'm connecting to the interwebs, right? That's how we had to connect back in the 90s. And what happened here with these AOL chat rooms is you couldn't see each other, you couldn't hear each other, and so you could create whoever you wanted to be. You could create whoever you wanted them to be. And a brand new paradigm shift of fantasy entered our culture. We connected. And we're still trying to connect. MySpace, dead. 6 Degrees, dead. Bolt, dead. We're looking for ways, trying to connect, and this one took the cake. Now, real quick, just so you know, this came out in 2004. At the end of 2004, they had 1 million users, Facebook. By the end of 2005, 5.5. By the end of 2006, 12 million. By the end of 2007, 50 million. By the end of 2008, 100 million. By the end of 2009, 350 million users. To the end of last year, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg reported 1.1 billion daily users because we long for connection. It's hardwired in us. But it goes back to the early 2000s, late 90s probably, but this desire to connect socially. We can create a brand new paradigm. I can be whoever I want to be. Which then led to a searching era, where we began to search the Googles, and we could find whatever we wanted to find. We could have all the information at our fingertips. I want the best car, I want the best phone, I want the best brand, I want the best recipe, I want the safest car for my kids, I want the best investments for dummies. I want it all, and I want it my way. And we became the most informed generation ever, yet the least knowledgeable, the least wise. Which then led to, I don't just want to create somebody else, I want to now see them. And this took over. 2005 it was created, but 2010 it exploded. Entertain me. Entertain me. Entertain me. Me, me, me. Which then led to a new reality, a VR reality. And it's only getting quicker and quicker and quicker that we're being kind of forced these things, if you will. The Google glasses, the VR. So now we could, AOL chat rooms, we could chat and create whatever we wanted to be. Now we have VR rooms where we can enter in virtually and see. Virtually and play games together, virtually and do other things together. The VR is wild. And now we have this. ChatGPT. And if you don't know what this is, I'm just going to encourage you, go to the Googles and look it up. It's not going away. And it's forever going to change, again, a new paradigm in our culture. And there's mixed feelings on it. Gary Vee says, you might as well take advantage of it. It's not going anywhere. Use it to brand yourself. Use it to build your business. Use it for your LinkedIn. Use it to make yourself money. It's not going away. Be smart about it. Teachers are saying this is going to eliminate the need for a child to read a book. If you don't know what ChatGPT is, I can type a topic, a message for Armbrush Church on May 14th, 2023, enter, and within 30 seconds, I can have a 10-page paper, a 10-page message with footnotes and citations Bible references, it does it all for me. And then I read an article that Elon Musk said this April 27th, 2023. He's talking about a conversation he was having with the guy who created Google. And him and this guy are having a conversation, Larry Page. And they said this, in the not so distant future, we will create some sort of super intelligence, a digital super intelligence, AI, ChatGPT. It will become basically a digital God. Now, for those of you sitting in this room, you're like, well, that's not going to be me. And it probably won't be. You're not going to follow a digital God. You probably have your head on your shoulders, maybe a little bit. But there's 350,000 people in our county. Less than 1% of them went to church on Easter Sunday. Because we follow a digital God now. A superintelligence. We don't have to make decisions anymore. The computer does it for us. I don't have to make decisions anymore. You know why? Because my influencer, the person I follow, they tell me what to think. They tell me what to do. They tell me who to be. And as a culture, searching for truth is even more difficult now, even than 10 years ago, because we have deep fakes. If you don't know what that is, you can look that up. You can create anything you want online, and it can become true. And so in this paradigm shift of connecting and searching and entertaining a new reality and AI, it's only continuing to push us further forward and drift us further behind this. It's no wonder when everything is true, nothing's true. It's no wonder that if we stand for nothing, we will fall for everything. It's no wonder that what one generation tolerates, the next generation endorses. What my grandparents tolerated, my parents endorsed as a generation. What they tolerated with us, I endorsed as a parent. What I tolerate, my kids will endorse. You see how this works. It's no wonder that America is the third least evangelized nation in the world, which just means this: we are the third least I'm going to tell you about Jesus in the world. 2022, George Barna. The third least. It's no wonder. I want to give you a Sunday school answer this morning. Remember when the Sunday school teacher was like, what do you think of that? Jesus. Like, if you just guessed Jesus, you were probably right 95% of the time. He is the answer to the better life you've been looking for. Some of us need to be still and stop searching in wrong places. Stop trying to find connections in wrong places. Stop trying to be entertained in wrong places and learning from wrong places, and trust that Jesus is the answer to the better life. Because there is a battle for your life and mine. Eternal life and eternal death is on the line. We don't talk about that very often because we don't like it. It's like sin. That just sounds harsh. Hell, that sounds harsh. It's real. And every single one of us is a sinner saved by grace. And if you want the better life, you have to trust Jesus, follow Jesus, serve Jesus, honor Jesus, obey Jesus, and worship Jesus. There's no forgiveness apart from Jesus. Because God is so rich in his kindness, in his goodness, and his grace, he purchased our freedom with the blood of his Son. I love that. He is so rich in kindness. Can I just ask you, where are you searching for fulfillment? Where are you searching for connection? Where are you searching for meaning? This is the OG search bar, Jeeves. We used to ask Jeeves, how do I do it? You young'uns, it's Googles. And I get it now. You search the Googles. I used to ask this guy in his suit, how do I find this? You're a little bit older. These are yours. We've been searching forever. And there's millions of places to search. When was the last time you searched here, though? For meaning, for purpose, for connection, for entertainment? If you like battle and war, read the Old Testament. It's gruesome. If you like poetry, read the Psalms, Song of Solomon. Read Revelation if you like knowing about end times. If you want to be entertained with this. It's fascinating. When was the last time you searched here? See, the enemy wants to tell you, and specifically a lot lately since the 2000s, if you're good, you're going to go to heaven. If you just have trust, you're going to go to heaven. If you're kind, you're going to go to heaven. After all, how could a loving God send someone to hell? So I want to close with a thought. Because we've declared as a people, we've declared as a nation, in fact, I think we've kind of declared as a globe, that Jesus is one of many ways to heaven. Even if you don't believe, even if you personally don't believe the Bible is actually the most historically accurate book ever written. Theologians, historians, atheists have proven that what is in here is true. You can't refute it. You might not believe it, and that's okay. You can't refute it, though. So it's true. So one of the ways they try to kind of dissolve it and minimize it is to say, well, Jesus, yes, he did come and he did live and he lived a perfect life, but he's just one of many ways. But I want you to picture this. You're Jesus, you're in heaven, you're sitting on your recliner, you got your feet up, your popcorn popped, and your Arnie Palmy beside you, and you're just enjoying a nice afternoon, watching a big TV. Your father walks in and stands in front of it, and you're like, Dad, trying to see the TV. And he says, hey, TV, pause. TV pauses. Your father looks down at you and says, Jesus, it's time. You got to suspend your glory. You got to head down to earth now. The first 32 and a half plus years are going to be fantastic. The last 10 days, specifically the last 24 hours, are going to be brutal. You're going to be lied about. A couple friends are going to sell you out. You're going to get arrested falsely. You're not going to have a fair trial. You're going to be beat. Be stripped down, naked, embarrassed, flogged, spit on, mocked. You're going to have to pick up a 150-pound piece of wood. They're going to call it a cross. You're going to have to walk up a dirty road to Golgotha. Your back's going to be shredded open, and that wood's not going to be nicely sanded down. It's going to hurt. It's going to dig into your back. You're going to get to the top of Golgotha. They're going to lay you on that cross. They're going to spit on you again and mock you some more. And unfortunately, your mom's going to have to stand there and watch. No one's going to come to rescue you. It's going to be brutal, son. It'll be the worst thing you've ever experienced. They're going to raise you up. They're going to mock you some more, throw rocks at you, ridicule you, mock you, put a sign above, King of the Jews. And you're going to die. I'm not going to come and get you yet. You got to wait 3 days. And then you can come back here. You can put your feet back up. You can press resume. Get your popcorn and your Arnie Palmy. How's that sound, son? If I'm Jesus and I'm one of 10 ways, I'm going to say back, Dad, what can they do with 10 that they can't do with 9? They don't need me. Jesus declared in the most historically accurate book ever written, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. It doesn't say, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me and being good. No man comes to the Father except through me and being good and Buddha. No man comes to the Father except through me and being good and Buddha and Joseph Smith. No man comes to the Father except through me and being good and Buddha and Joseph Smith and ChatGPT. No man comes to the Father except through me and having 1 million followers. No, I am the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus said. You do not come to heaven except through me and what I'm doing for you. And some of us, as I close out this series, I just want us to remember this. We have searched for connection and relationships and power and finances and family and friends and influence. We've searched those places for a better life, and it's not found there. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with those things. It's when we overlook this. This is the better life. And so 2 weeks ago, we closed with a response And last week, Bobby closed with a response. I'm not going to close it with a response necessarily. I'm going to close with a reminder for you. I asked you at the very beginning of this service, what is one characteristic, what's one trait of God that you love? Here's your reminder for you this morning. If you've been searching wrong places to find the better life, but you're thinking, man, I believe that God is good. I believe that God is holy and just and sent his son. And I need to search here more. I'm going to ask you to honestly right now just to stand, and I'm going to stand with you. It's not a call or response. It's just a reminder that, yeah, I'm in on this. I'm in on this Bible. I'm in on this Jesus. If that's you, go ahead and stand. If it's not, don't. But a reminder, yeah, I'm in on Jesus. I'm for you, and I love you, and I worship you. And I make mistakes, and I fall short. And while I'm still sinning, you still sent your son for me, God. And I want to give you praise for that and give you thanks for that. And so, God, as we stand, some of us, it's a reminder to you, it's a reminder for us, and it's a reminder as a body of believers that we are in. We're going to fall short, we're going to mess up, we're going to miss the mark, and it's beautiful. Because while I still sin, you still sent your son. You are the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus. We don't get to the Father except through you. It's not you and, it's you, period. So God, would this be a reminder for any of us that have drifted? We've drifted to other things, we've drifted to other places, we've drifted to other people to find meaning, to find value, to find worth. Let this be a reminder for us that we are back in on you. That we would wholly, 100% surrender to you, to be still and to know that you are God. May it be a reminder for us this morning. Not just standing because everybody else did. Standing because I've got to search more into your kindness, into your goodness, into your grace, into your favor, into your future. So help this to be a reminder for us. And we love you and we worship you. And as a church we say, amen and amen. You can stay standing. We're done. Next week I just want to invite you, starting a 2-week mini-series called 30-Minute Theology. That should be possible, right? Sum up Jesus in the Bible and sin and holiness and the Trinity and the doctrine, all those things in 30 minutes. Why not? Let's do it next week. Come back. Happy Mother's Day. Don't forget to take a picture, get a succulent, and we will see you next Sunday, church.